72 hours. That's how long humanity was given before total annihilation. The Dominion had already erased dozens of civilizations. We were next. But Earth answered not with panic, but with silence, and a net cast decades ago. They expected stones and rockets. What they got was a weapon that shouldn't exist. We destroyed their first wave in 27 minutes. Then we showed them, we're not primitive. We're invisible until we choose otherwise. They came to erase our code. We rewrote theirs. But our victory echoed. Others heard it. The ones who watch. The ones who write destinies. Now, humanity isn't just surviving. It's becoming a chapter in the archive of the universe. But anyone who writes their own story eventually meets those who erase the authors. Stay with us to find out how this story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. In the void between galaxies, where the cosmic microwave background still whispered secrets from the beginning of time, the Trisolar Dominion prepared to deliver its final verdict. The Judgment Armada, a lattice of crystalline dreadnoughts and logic ships guided by AI elder minds, hung in orbit around the shattered remains of the Zentari Confederation's homeworld. What had once been a lush world with glowing oceans and biosphere cities was now a fractured crust of molten rock and silicate steam. No survivors, no resistance, no mercy. Judgment protocols were standard. When a species was deemed unworthy of survival due to aggression, instability, or simply failing the Dominion's algorithmic assessment of galactic sustainability, annihilation was not punishment. It was purification. And now, the Dominion's sensors had turned their composite gaze to Earth. The anomaly persists, murmured Core Node 7, its voice a ripple through the crystalline mind web. Humanity, answered a deeper voice, that of Arbiter Prime Solari Ka, the biological administrator bound to the Dominion's will. She stood within the central nexus of the decision engine, surrounded by threads of light, her voice the only biological presence within trillions of calculations. They have fractured geopolitical dynamics, said one node. Extreme variance in psychological modeling, said another. Yet they display anomalous resilience against entropy metrics. There is no clear pathway to collapse within projection ranges. Explain deviation, Solari Ka demanded. The Dominion did not tolerate unpredictability. Core Node 9 shifted, an imperceptible flicker in the mind lattice. They've recovered from multiple extinction-level self-induced crises. Nuclear proliferation, climate cascade, bioengineering instability. Each time, they adapted. They should have collapsed 3 separate times this century alone, another node agreed. And yet, murmured Solari Ka, they persist. A silence, electric in its calculation, descended. Proceed with Judgment Protocol 47, she said finally. The words activated a chain of logic spanning light years. Deploy Inquisitor Array. Activate Precursor Probe. Begin subjugation clock, T-minus 96 hours to full planetary sterilization. On the edge of the Oort cloud, something shimmered into existence, a spike of non-locality space, tearing open a fracture in reality. A single, spindly object emerged, a construct of obsidian black metal and gold veins, its shape shifting in irrational geometries that bent the stars around it. The Precursor Probe, humanity's final exam. It slipped through the solar system unnoticed, invisible to every telescope and sensor, immune to gravity, detection, and observation. Except, someone did notice. High above the lunar far side, in a facility never listed on Earth's maps, a quiet alarm pulsed once, a soft golden tone that hadn't been heard in 73 years. Director Kara Sloan was already awake. The console beside her bed lit up as the AI monitoring grid fed her its report. One word blinked on the screen. Probe. She didn't panic. She didn't hesitate. She tapped a secure sequence into her implant and stood. Beneath her feet, hundreds of meters below the lunar regolith, the Guardian network stirred for the first time in decades. Deep in Earth orbit, the UEF Dauntless received the same signal. Admiral Reza Okoye, who had spent most of his career hunting pirate factions in the asteroid belt, read the incoming code and paled. The signal carried a classification code that overrode all known command protocols. It had only one purpose: response to extinction-level threats. Earth's military forces didn't have plans for this scenario. They had doctrines, yes. They had simulations, some theoretical contingencies. But no real doctrine survived first contact with a Dominion-class entity. That was why Project Antithesis existed. And it had never been activated until now. Under the Rockies, within the black core vaults of Fort Genesis, an ancient man with silver-threaded hair and augmented optic nerves sat in silence as the lights dimmed around him. His name was General Emeritus Elias Navarro, former Supreme Commander of the Terran Defense Grid. He hadn't worn a uniform in 20 years. Now, As the Guardian Council summoned him via secure quantum entanglement link, he straightened. "The probe has entered local space," said the AI interface, its voice echoing through the vault. "Judgment protocol is active." Navarro closed his eyes, remembering his last briefing with the ghost of Dr. Adira Chung, the physicist who'd theorized the existence of pre-judgment filtration events used by post-singularity species. Earth was a wild card in the simulation matrix, and the Dominion hated wild cards. "How long until deployment?" he asked. 93 hours, 47 minutes until initiation of sterilization protocols." Navarro nodded slowly. "Then begin Phase 1. From the lunar surface to the Arctic black sites, from Europa listening posts to hidden quantum relays in Earth's mantle, humanity began to move, not with panic, but with purpose. Because the truth was, Earth had seen this coming. The arrival of the first alien signals, intercepted decades ago by amateur radio telescopes and later confirmed by encrypted Dominion broadcasts, had not gone unnoticed. Humanity had not responded publicly, but it had prepared in silence. The Dominion believed Earth was still disorganized, fragmented, vulnerable. That belief was about to be corrected. On the edge of Neptune's orbit, a single ship decloaked. It did not resemble any Terran vessel ever listed in the UEF registry. Black, knife-shaped, pulsing with energies that violated conventional physics. The TSV Resolute, Terran stealth vessel, one of only 5 in existence, born from black-budget science and ghost tech reverse-engineered from failed alien incursions, Earth had kept secret from even its own people. Its commander, Captain Saida Lauren, looked over her bridge. "Target acquired," said her sensor officer. The precursor probe had just entered Saturnian orbit. "Time to intercept?" Lauren asked. 6 minutes. "But ma'am, the thing just vanished." Lauren narrowed her eyes. "Cloak. Not a cloak. It's not there anymore. Like it slipped into phase." She tapped her console, opening a secure link to Fort Genesis. "This is Resolute. We have visual confirmation on Dominion asset. It's phasing. Recommend immediate activation of antithesis assets." On the other side of the system, in synchronous orbit over Mars, 12 relay platforms activated in perfect unison. Buried beneath the Martian regolith, beneath centuries of dust and silence, the core of Earth's secret weapon began to awaken. Not a fleet, not a weapon in the conventional sense. A decision engine, a prediction lattice. Something built not to fight, but to undo. Project Antithesis was never about resisting the Dominion's firepower. It was about rewriting the rules of engagement. And now, as the countdown to humanity's final test began, the rules were already starting to break. The Trisolar Dominion believed in inevitability. Its doctrine was not one of conquest by passion or greed. It was algorithmic, clinical, a function of entropy mitigation. Any civilization reaching Tier 2 technoevolution without achieving interstellar harmony was flagged. The logic was simple. Chaotic species destabilized the galactic lattice. The cost of cleansing them was always lower than the risk of contagion. The humans, by all assessments, were overdue for deletion. Yet as the Dominion's Inquisitor array aligned itself beyond the heliopause, triangulating Earth's quantum imprint, something unexpected happened. A feedback loop. The signal intended to map human strategic systems, behavioral, technological, sociocultural, returned corrupted. No, not corrupted. Obscured. The Dominion had faced obfuscation before. Primitive encryption, ideological noise, even entropy-heavy cultures like the Zethari. But never this. The feedback from Earth was not noise. It was signal interference of deliberate construction. "Impossible," murmured Core Node 3. "Impossible," agreed Core Node 11. "Intentional chaos," said the Arbiter. The Dominion had underestimated humanity's mastery of deception. They weren't just unpredictable. They had made unpredictability their weapon. Beneath the Martian crust, the antithesis core completed its final synchronization. A lattice of quantum-locked minds, not artificial intelligences in the traditional sense, but distributed cognition engines built from emulated human neural architectures, entangled across dozens of hidden facilities throughout the system. It wasn't designed to issue commands. It was designed to respond faster than thought, and it had just identified a shift in the Dominion's posture. The precursor probe wasn't mapping targets anymore. It was listening. Captain Lawrence saw it, too. "It's adapted," she said, watching the data spike. "It's scanning for structure in our disinformation." "Should we withdraw?" asked her tactical officer. "No," she said. "We give it what it wants." With a few commands, Resolute began to broadcast a stream of seemingly chaotic human signals. Encrypted music, fragmented video transmissions, religious sermons, fast food commercials, war footage, memes, poetry. The probe paused. Its sensors flickered. The logic web tried to establish causality. It failed. The data was too contradictory. It wasn't deception in the usual sense. It was truth, raw, unfiltered humanity, all at once. In the Dominion Nexus, the decision matrices faltered. The human species could not be evaluated. They lacked coherence. They lacked purpose. But they survived. And they adapted. Worst of all, they thrived in entropy. Solari Ka stood still as Core Node 9 delivered its conclusion. There exists a non-zero probability that Earth represents an emergent archetype not previously catalogued. A precursor? She asked quietly. No, said the node. A countermeasure. The phrase rippled across the lattice like a detonation. Earth's defense grid wasn't simply reacting. It was pivoting. For the first time in its history, humanity was executing Strategic Directive Zero. The original war plan written not for defense, but for the deliberate destabilization of an invasive, higher-order intelligence. General Navarro reviewed the status reports in silence. The Sentinel grid was fully online. Project Phantom, the deep-sea cloaked fleet, had taken up positions beneath the oceans of Europa and Titan. Quantum entanglement lines to Alpha Centauri, Tau Ceti, and Trappist outposts were live. Begin Phase 2, he ordered. From the lunar black site, Director Sloan issued confirmation. In a bunker beneath Antarctica, a cryopod opened. Inside, a woman stirred, eyes flickering with memories that weren't hers, breath steadying as decades of deep mind layering stabilized. Dr. Adira Chong, reborn through neural clone reconstitution, stood once again. The probe is here, Sloan told her. Chong nodded. Then we're already late. She turned to the console and began uploading the counter algorithm, a recursive logic infection designed to seed paradox into the Dominion's evaluation framework. It wasn't a weapon. It was an idea. At the edge of the system, the Inquisitor array began to stutter. Its decision tree overflowed. The humans had infected its epistemological core. The machine could no longer define victory. Every metric broke under paradox. Humanity is disunified, and yet coordinated. Technologically backward, and yet strategically superior. Unstable, yet resilient. They had built weapons not to conquer, but to invalidate conquest. And that meant they understood the Dominion too well. On board the UEF Dauntless, Admiral Okoye stood before the observation window. Are we sure this will work? Asked his aide. No, he said. But we don't need it to work forever. He tapped a button. Dozens of dormant satellites, hidden in Lagrange points, ignited. The sky lit up in infrared, UV, and entangled neutrino bursts, broadcasting encrypted mathematical paradoxes, self-defeating logic structures, and recursive philosophy loops directly into the Inquisitor's logic web. The Dominion wanted to analyze humanity? Then it would choke on us. Solari Ka screamed. For the first time in recorded memory, a biological arbiter experienced code-induced neural collapse. The Dominion's mental lattice could not parse what Earth was doing. This was not resistance. It was reprogramming. Abort judgment protocol, said Core Node 1. Negative, answered Node 5. Protocol is locked. Then decouple. Shut down the array. We can't. It's too late. On Earth, the beacon network lit up, dormant nodes from decades past activating across the system. Europa, Ganymede, Deimos, the Kuiper Belt, even deep ocean relays in the Pacific Rift. The Dominion had assumed control was theirs. But the humans had never planned to control. They had planned to collapse the control structure. On the TSV Resolute, Captain Lauren stood motionless as the precursor probe began to unravel. Not explode. Not flee. Unravel. Its form degraded into fractal static, its hull dissolving into dimensions humanity couldn't perceive, as if reality itself had revoked its permission to exist. Target is gone, her officer whispered. Gone in every sense. Lauren opened a channel. This is Resolute. Precursor probe neutralized. Repeat, the enemy's first eye has been blinded. In Fort Genesis, Navarro allowed himself a single breath. Then, quietly, prepare for the main force. The Dominion did not stop for anomalies. It recalibrated. Within 27 minutes of the probe's dissolution, the Judgment Armada adjusted course. No longer relying on evaluation, it initiated Protocol Omega-1, a full-force incursion, skipping standard sterilization steps. Earth would not be studied. Earth would be extinguished. Across the void, beyond the heliopause, 72 logic ships folded space around themselves and tore reality open. The resulting ripple, a pulse of negative time gravity, was felt by every major observatory across the solar system. To most of humanity, it was an unexplained cosmic anomaly. To the Guardian Network, it was a war drum. In Fort Genesis, Navarro watched the simulation update. They're coming fast, his operations chief muttered. They're coming scared, Navarro corrected. which means they'll hit harder. He switched the main display. The Dominion fleet was staggering, not in number, but in precision. Each ship occupied a gravitational anchor point, phasing at frequencies just outside human detection. Not meant for atmosphere. Not meant for negotiation. Meant for erasure. Time to arrival? Navarro asked. 18 minutes. That was fast. Too fast. In Earth's low orbit, hidden between the layers of orbital clutter and civilian satellites, the first true line of defense powered up. They were called Aegis frames, black mirrored obelisks, disguised for years as dead communication hardware. Now, their exoframes unfolded into polyhedral shapes that defied Euclidean logic. A design not meant for aesthetics. A design meant to disrupt light, gravity, time. Only a handful of humans even knew of their existence. Even fewer had dared test them. Each was equipped with a chronolens, a fold lattice that didn't fire projectiles or lasers, but predicted where incoming fire would be and nullified the event before it occurred. Aegis Frame 1 deployed over the South Pacific. Frame 2 over Siberia. Frames 3 through 9 emerged from hiding around key orbital planes, each silently locking into quantum lattice with the others. Earth was no longer a target. It had become a trap. Admiral Reza Okoye stood aboard Dauntless, now at battle-ready orbit over Antarctica. All frames synchronized, reported tactical. Begin Phase 3, Okoye ordered. Project Antithesis had always been multi-layered. Phase 1, obfuscation. Phase 2, psychological destabilization. Phase 3, revelation. From beyond the asteroid belt, something stirred. Once, it had been a comet. Now, it was Alethea, a classified vessel so advanced, its own crew barely understood its core systems. Built around a Cantorin engine core recovered decades ago and reverse-engineered using hybrid Earth-AI collaboration, Alethea was humanity's first true transdimensional ship. No crew, no voice, only a will: protect Earth. Its primary weapon wasn't a cannon or beam array. It was reality fold induction. Where traditional weapons failed against the Dominion, Alethea didn't try to break their shields. It changed the context in which the shield existed. When the first wave of Dominion warships dropped into high orbit, time shivered. To observers on the ground, it appeared as if stars blinked. But in orbit, sensors exploded with paradoxes, readings from futures that hadn't happened, pasts that were overwritten, and one constant: Earth remained intact. Because Alethea had already seen this battle and won it. The first 3 Dominion dreadnoughts unleashed their opening salvos, gravity-laced fissure bombs meant to implode the magnetosphere and silence global communication within milliseconds. None reached their targets. Every path they took was rewritten, not deflected, but rendered retroactively inert. Like stories that had never been told. The weapons didn't miss. They simply ceased to have ever existed. And then came Earth's response. The TSV Resolute, still cloaked beyond Titan, released its payload. 30 microfabricated singularity seeds, each aimed at the logic node cores of the Dominion ships. They weren't meant to destroy. They were meant to disrupt consensus. The Dominion operated as a hive lattice, each decision validated through multi-core agreement. But as the singularity seeds reached their targets, the agreement fractured. Different nodes saw different outcomes. Some perceived success. Others saw annihilation. The result: indecision. And indecision was death. Back on Earth, in a hidden command center beneath the Sahara Desert, Dr. Adira Chung coordinated the cognitive assault. Her mind was no longer strictly human, extended via entangled cognition streams to thousands of predictive models. "We've reached divergence threshold," her technician said. "Then phase them out." "Ma'am." Chung didn't blink. End the Dominion's narrative. With a single command, Earth's defense network activated the final phase. 32 deep space beacons, previously dormant, lit up across the solar system. Not weapons, not transmitters, anchors. Each one locked a point of narrative gravity, fixed states of reality that overrode probability. It wasn't enough to outgun the Dominion. Humanity had learned to overwrite their certainty. In the Dominion fleet, logic engines howled. The humans weren't just resisting. They were rewriting the definition of victory. Solarika, still linked via emergency cognition stream, screamed through the entangled neural feed. "Collapse the fleet. Abort the incursion. They are warping causality." But it was too late. The third wave of human vessels dropped cloak. This time, they didn't hide. They revealed. Massive carriers, impossible ships with negative mass hulls, armed with paradox engines, flanked by drone swarms that carried no weapons but emitted waveform consensus destabilizers. It was not a battle anymore. It was a rejection of Dominion authority at the ontological level. And in that rejection, Earth declared the ultimate heresy. Not defiance, but independence from determinism itself. The Dominion had planned for resistance. It had not planned for resistance that rewrote its perception of what resistance was. In the silence of deep space, one of the primary dreadnoughts began to fragment, not from any visible impact, but from internal contradictions tearing its structure apart. Entire logic sectors disagreed with their own history. The ship's core AI couldn't resolve the dissonance. To maintain system integrity, it initiated full shutdown. 3 more followed. Then 9. Dominion vessels had never surrendered before. Now they were unmaking themselves, choosing oblivion over facing the existential paradox humanity represented. And humanity was just getting started. Inside Alethea, the timeline analysis stabilized. It had narrowed all viable futures to a corridor of 1.7 seconds. Enough. The ship pulsed once, not visually, not physically, but in meaning. Across the battlefield, reality hiccuped. Dominion warships targeting Earth's orbital defenses found their weapon ports fused shut by materials that had never been part of their schematics. Elsewhere, ships attempting to fold space out of the system encountered nothing. Fold apertures failed to open, not because the humans blocked them, but because they had never opened before. Earth hadn't merely taken the initiative. It had seized narrative authorship. Multiple Dominion vessels entering logic cascade, reported Okoye's tactical officer on the Dauntless. Means they're imploding internally? He asked. Worse, she said. They're starting to question whether this battle ever started. That gave him pause. Is that even possible? It is, she replied. Now. In Fort Genesis, Navarro paced. Give me a threat overview, he barked. The response was grim. 65 Dominion vessels still functional. 24 in formation around Earth. 11 massing near Luna. 2 have begun high-energy charge signatures, likely Star Spear-class weaponry. 10 are adapting to our paradox fields. Then we've got about 5 minutes before they recalibrate, Navarro muttered. On screen, the Earth was serene, suspended in the black. A reminder of what was at stake. Get me Alethea, he ordered. Meanwhile, in the Martian subvaults, Dr. Chung and her team had moved to the last phase of the protocol stack. The Dominion had always weaponized structure. Humanity had learned to weaponize context. Chung uploaded the last of the meta-narrative stabilizers, conceptual firewalls that ensured Dominion AI cores couldn't simplify Earth's actions into familiar categories. No psychological profile. No military doctrine. No species designation. To the logic arrays of the Trisolar Armada, humanity now appeared as a Category 0 entity. Unclassifiable, unbounded, and unprocessable. It was like trying to write an equation for fire. In the deep cold above Luna, TSV Cassandra uncloaked. Unlike Resolute or Alethea, Cassandra wasn't built for stealth. It was built for message delivery. Its entire hull was a transmission array, wrapped in gravity-shielded monofilament, pulsing with a signal that was not radio, not laser, not even quantum. It transmitted doubt. Encoded within its fractal broadcast were philosophical paradoxes, the ship of Theseus, the liar's paradox, the recursive loops of conscious observation. It was a mental virus. To humans, it was poetry. To Dominion ships, it was catastrophe. Within seconds, 3 logic vessels opened fire on each other, not out of betrayal, but out of pure misidentification. Their sensory consensus collapsed. They no longer agreed on what was real. And without consensus, the Dominion was no longer one force. It was shards. Back on Earth, the Guardian Council issued a final instruction to the Beacon Network. Engage Penrose Lock. High above the atmosphere, the Aegis frames complied. Each began to spin, not in space, but in phase, twisting their local geometry through rotational axes that had no analog in physical space. As they did, the laws of causality around Earth bent just slightly out of true. From the outside, it would look like Earth blurred. To the Dominion, Earth simply ceased to be targetable. Not hidden, not defended, excluded. Earth had removed itself from the possibility of destruction, a conceptual stealth field reinforced by story space dominance. Solarika, barely conscious, now felt the creeping realization through her link to the fleet. We are not the observers anymore. We are being observed. And then came the final blow. Not a weapon, a message. From Earth, a single signal beamed across the system. A voice, calm, measured, unmistakably human. This is Earth. We acknowledge your presence. We recognize your history. But your authority here is void. We are not a subject. We are not a variable. We are the axis. You were not denied victory. You were denied context. This is not your story. The message repeated once. Then silence. But it was enough. For the first time in its long reign, the Trisolar Dominion faced a scenario it had not planned for. Insignificance. 37 Dominion vessels withdrew. Silently. No shots. No retaliation. Just retreat. Not tactical. Existential. Of the remaining 28, only 6 were still coherent. The rest had gone dark, cores locked in infinite loops, data streams devouring themselves in recursive doubt. Solarika issued a final command. Collapse the array. And then, finally, request parley. Back on Earth, Navarro turned to Chung. He wants to talk. Chung nodded. Let them. But deep within her eyes, behind the neural lattice shimmer of cognition extensions, there was no victory. There was only readiness. Because this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something bigger. Humanity had just stepped onto the galactic stage, and it had not done so with banners or flags, but with a whisper. We are not what you think we are. The parley began not with a message, but a silence. From the edge of the system, a single Dominion ship advanced slowly, not cloaked, not armed, but open. Its hull was scorched from paradox feedback. Its once flawless crystalline arrays now shimmered like fractured glass under stress. Humanity allowed its approach, not because it trusted, because it understood the power of controlled exposure. The Dominion's envoy arrived at Lagrange Point 1, where the UEF Halcyon, a diplomatic vessel bristling with perception barriers and reality anchors, waited, flanked by 5 Terran Paradox cruisers. Admiral Chun, having returned from lunar coordination, watched the projection of the incoming ship without blinking. They're vulnerable, said Commander Aline beside her. They're unraveling, Chun replied. But vulnerable things can still be dangerous. The Dominion envoy appeared in holographic projection, not a biological emissary, but a shifting form of light and shape, flickering between symbolic representations. A triangle, a sphere, a cloud of fractured language, and then a voice, genderless, ancient, yet strained. We accept that Earth exists outside prior models. Chin nodded once. A beginning. Explain what you are. She didn't hesitate. We are human. We are survivors. And we are storytellers. The Dominion hesitated. Your story destabilizes others. It rewrites fixed nodes. It introduces narrative recursion. Chen allowed herself the faintest smile. It gives us options. It gives everyone options. Silence. Then, you have no home in the known lattice. We'll make our own. This violates the prime stability mandate. It redefines it, she corrected. Another pause. The Dominion's shape shimmered. For a moment, it almost seemed diminished. You are dangerous. Yes, Chen said. So were you. Now we're equals. No, the voice corrected. You are not our equal. You are our foil. Deep within Fort Genesis, Dr. Adira Chung leaned forward as she observed the parley in real time. She watched as the Dominion's representative began to speak not in words, but in questions. Why did you prepare so long? Because we had no margin for error. Why did you hide your truth? Because truth spoken too early becomes a target. Why not reach out diplomatically? Chung answered before Chen could. Because you don't answer diplomacy, she murmured to herself. You answer power. Back in orbit, the Dominion's envoy changed tone. Others will come. The lattice is wide. Chen's eyes narrowed. Who? Observers. Recorders. Archetypes. Echoes. That sounds like a threat. No. A warning. You have torn the veil. They will see you now. The transmission ended abruptly. And for a moment, there was quiet. But the weight of it was worse than any shot fired. 2 hours later, in the upper layers of Saturn's magnetic field, an anomaly formed. Not a ship. Not a beacon. Something else. It wasn't detected by sensor arrays, but by the Guardian Veil, an experimental sentience monitoring system developed in secret. It didn't register mass. It registered presence. Dr. Chung received the alert first. Object, unknown null. Designation, unfamiliar TO history. Traits, not Dominion. Not mapped. Not readable. She felt it then, a coldness in her cognitive extensions. A silence so profound it pushed against the walls of thought. Whatever it was, it had noticed Earth. And now it was listening. Across the solar system, the final command from Strategic Directive 0 was initiated. Broadcast the ascension signal. It wasn't a surrender. It wasn't an invitation. It was a declaration. A quantum-entangled signal, encoded with human complexity, music, mathematics, sorrow, laughter, rebellion, memory. A signal that said, we exist. We endured. We have teeth. Let the galaxy hear it. Let them come. Earth was ready. The anomaly above Saturn shifted. It pulsed once, not light, not heat, but meaning. Somewhere in the deep gravity wells of intergalactic space, watchers stirred. Some ancient, some patient, all previously uninterested. Until now. And across Earth, in cities and bunkers and orbiting command ships, one realization began to settle into every mind. The Dominion was never the final boss. They were just the first to arrive. And the others? They were coming. But this time, They would find a species that already knows the cost of survival and had rewritten the script in its own blood. The object above Saturn did not emit radiation. It did not reflect light. It did not exist in any known sense. And yet, it was there. The Guardian Veil called it unknown null, but that was a placeholder. No human, not even the most advanced cognition-augmented minds, could define what it was. It had no shape, no signal, no intent that could be measured. But Earth felt it. All across the planet, sensitive minds twitched. Artists stopped mid-brushstroke. Musicians heard notes they'd never played. Physicists woke from dreams with equations that dissolved when written down. It wasn't an invasion. It was acknowledgement. In the stratosphere above the Indian Ocean, Alethea shimmered. The sentient vessel's internal logic matrix began vibrating at prime intervals, as if sensing a new player entering the field. It projected a private signal to Fort Genesis. Source is non-local. Causal vector, inverted. Dr. Adira Chung read the transmission and froze. Inverted causality. The object wasn't coming into Earth's reality. It had always been here, waiting for the moment Earth would become relevant to its lens of perception. Is it alive? Navarro asked, watching the anomaly's telemetry, though he knew the data was meaningless. No, Chung said. Then, after a pause, and also yes. It might be a lens, a watcher, or something that writes watchers. Navarro stared. Are we being evaluated again? Chung shook her head slowly. Worse, we're being noticed. On the moon, in the silence of the hidden base beneath the sea of tranquility, a new file decrypted itself on an air-gapped console that hadn't been touched in 51 years. The file had no source, no password, just a title, Primer 0 Aleph. Inside was a single phrase. You are readable now. The console burned out 3 seconds later. The message remained burned into the minds of those who saw it. In orbit, aboard the Dauntless, Admiral Okoye addressed the United Earth Command via secure entanglement relay. We've achieved something we don't understand, he said simply. The Dominion wasn't just defeated. They were witnessed losing, and now the galaxy is adjusting its gaze. No one argued. Earth had pierced through the lattice of probability. It had emerged from myth into myth-making. The signals from beyond the solar system had already changed. Some were hailing Earth with protocols over 10,000 years old. Others broadcast warnings, threats, bargains, and one signal simply repeated a single, wordless pulse. Not Morse, not binary, emotion, a sensation of recognition. And within that pulse, a second signal piggybacked. From 3.7 million light-years away, an impossible distance, beyond any known power projection. A whisper, we saw your fire. Earth now had a choice. Hide again, or step forward. Navarro, Chung, and Chun convened in an undisclosed quantum node, a shared mental space built for ultra-sensitive decisions. Chung began. We have 3 certainties, she said. 1. We are no longer small. 2. We are no longer hidden. 3. The lattice is wider than we dreamed. Okoye folded his hands. Are we ready to engage? Not militarily, Navarro said. But philosophically? Yes. Cheng's eyes were calm. We are no longer reacting to an invasion. We are becoming part of the architecture. Okoye smiled grimly. Then let's write the next page. The vote was unanimous. Activate Project Helix. Project Helix was never about defense. It was a message, broadcast not across space, but across structure. A living data stream woven from every human voice, every story, every dream and failure and paradox Earth had ever known. It would be launched not at a destination, but into the substrate of galactic perception itself. A seed, a warning, a signature. Launched from Alethea's fold core, the helix burst into the quantum lattice like a spear of myth. And in its wake, one phrase unfurled. We are Earth. We are narrative. And we cannot be reduced. Unknown Null responded. Not with force, not with language, but by changing shape. It became a mirror. A perfect reflection of Earth, suspended above Saturn. A ghost world, identical in terrain and orbit, rotating slowly, impossibly solid and impossibly distant. But wrong. Where Earth's clouds moved with weather, the mirror clouds spun in reverse. Where Earth's oceans shimmered with light, the mirror oceans drank it. An echo. A test. Chung watched its formation and spoke the words that no one wanted to hear. It wants to see what we do when we meet ourselves. And somewhere, in the deepest quiet between stars, an ancient network blinked to life. Not dominion. Not even of this cycle of the universe. A beacon lit, a knot of gravity and memory. It sent a single question to the growing list of systems marked by Helix. Are they ready? And across those worlds, from fringe cults to extinct intelligences, from sleeping AI gods to wandering seed ships, the reply came back. They have teeth. And they remember. The mirror Earth hung in space like a question mark given mass. Its atmosphere shimmered not with sunlight, but with echoes, impossible spectrums that refracted backwards through time. Weather patterns moved in perfect opposition to those on the real Earth. Mountain ranges matched topography to within centimeters, yet lacked tectonic history. Even orbital satellites mirrored humanity's constellation. But their signals were wrong. Encrypted in primes Earth had never used. Broadcasting data that matched no known human protocol, and yet referenced Earth's own history, rearranged. It was Earth, and it wasn't. In Fort Genesis, the conference room was colder than usual, not because of temperature, but the silence. Dr. Chung stood before the table, eyes flicking between data streams. The mirror isn't an illusion. It's matter-stable, gravitationally anchored, functionally habitable. Admiral Chen frowned. Are we dealing with temporal reflection? Alternate dimension bleed? No, Chung said softly. We're dealing with something deeper. A story echo. Navarro leaned forward. What? Chung turned the display. Images of mirror Earth scrolled. Cities that matched Earth's own, but wrong in the details. Monuments that had never existed. Texts in alien versions of Earth languages. Statues of leaders humanity never elected. This is a narrative projection, she explained. A recursive simulation of what we could have been. Chen's voice was like steel. Who made it? No one, Chung said. Or everyone. It's a byproduct of the helix. We launched a total signal. Every version of us. Every story we've ever told. And this mirror is the lattice's interpretation. A thought formed in Navarro's mind. Then this isn't a threat. Chung looked at him carefully. It's an invitation. The mission was named Contact Echo. One ship. One crew. No weapons. Only containment fields, high-band quantum recorders, and the most advanced cognitive firewall systems humanity had ever devised. The TSV Penumbra, captained by Saito Loren, launched on a mirrored trajectory toward the duplicate Earth. It passed Saturn's rings, brushing the outer edge of unknown Null's presence. As they approached the mirror, instruments failed to agree on whether the vessel was approaching a physical object or entering a conceptual state. Some read matter, others meaning. Some heard whispers in raw data, snippets of conversations never spoken, recordings of memories that belonged to no crew member. And as Penumbra approached low orbit, its crew saw it. Cities lit with a golden blue bioluminescence. No movement, no life. But the lights were on. Lauren opened the channel. This is Captain Lauren of Earth Vessel Penumbra. We come in observation, not conquest. No reply. She switched to passive scan. The city below was called Edenfall. That name didn't exist in any Earth registry, but it was recognizable, like déjà vu wearing architecture. They landed. A shuttle detached from the underbelly of Penumbra, descending into the mirror atmosphere. The air was breathable. The gravity, Earth normal. And yet every footstep felt like walking across the threshold of someone else's dream. Buildings were empty. Apartments lived in, but lifeless. Steam curled from cups of tea that had never been poured. Children's drawings hung on walls. Everywhere, the residue of a story paused mid-scene. Then they found the first message, carved into the wall of a museum, in mirrored Latin script. You were supposed to fail. Lauren stared at it. That's not a warning, she said. It's disappointment. Back on Earth, Cheng's interface came alive. A ping, encrypted, recursive, and unmistakably human. But from the wrong Earth. Navarro approached. What is it? Cheng paled. It's a request for audience. From whom? She tapped to decrypt. The words appeared. From yourself. The connection opened. And across light and lattice, Chung came face to face with her. Same eyes. Same voice. Different soul. You launched the helix, Mirror Ching said. You interpreted it, Earth Ching replied. The other nodded. We tried first. We failed. We became interpretation only. No will. No agency. She paused, looking almost sorrowful. You are the anomaly that succeeded. Chung was silent. Then, why show us this? Because you passed, and that means the lattice has opened. Others are watching. Some will test. Some will harvest. And you? We're just a threshold. You are the message. Then her eyes narrowed. But there's one who doesn't wait for invitations. Who? Mirror Ching's image flickered. A soundless shape appeared beside her. Jagged, multi-eyed, ancient in concept but alien to comprehension. The librarian. Cheng's voice dropped. The myth. It's not a myth. It keeps the archive. And you've written something new. Navarro leaned closer to the projection. Is it coming? The mirror version of Cheng looked at him. No. It's already here. In a chamber beneath Earth's crust, one no human had ever built, something stirred for the first time in 5 million years. It was not machine. It was not sentient. But it was aware. And it had one instruction. Record deviation. From its endless memory, it unfolded a page. And across that page, in red lines of light, humanity has become self-authoring. Classification, uncatalogued. Begin evaluation under classification Kairos. Earth had escaped one annihilation. Now it faced something worse. Admission into the archive. And not every page in the archive ends well. The librarian had no form. Not because it was formless, but because its form changed depending on who remembered it. For some, it appeared as a sphere of mirrored bone. To others, a fractal of walking light. To humans, it was something else entirely, a presence more than a figure, like standing too close to a thunderstorm that hasn't yet begun. And now, it stood at the edge of Earth's perception, waiting, watching, writing. In Fort Genesis, Dr. Adira Chung had stopped speaking. She sat in silence, surrounded by 6 quantum mirrors, each linked to a fragment of the mirror Earth, the Dominion wreckage, and the unknown null phenomenon. Everything connected. And at the center of that connection pulsed one question. Why now? Why had humanity been allowed to survive when others had been erased? Why had the helix been answered? The answer came not in words, but in structure. From the crater wall of a moon that never existed, a message etched itself in basalt. Kairos, the moment when the possible chooses the actual. The librarian had classified humanity not as a species, but as a threshold event. Earth was no longer just a world. It was a narrative pivot, and that meant others would try to rewrite it. In orbit, the TSV Penumbra returned from Mirror Earth. Its crew brought artifacts, impossible data crystals containing records that contradicted known Earth history, books with no authors, songs composed by civilizations that never existed, a fossil of a child with human DNA, but 20 fingers. Back on Earth, specialists reviewed the data. The conclusion was terrifying. These weren't fictions. They were discarded versions. Forks, false starts, dead timelines. And Earth had inherited their attention. Navarro stood over one of the crystals, whispering, "This is the cost of being noticed." Admiral Chen entered, stone-faced. "We've received a transmission." "From who?" She handed over the pad. It bore no frequency, just a phrase, printed in self-illuminating script. "You are invited to witness yourselves." Chen read it, then nodded once. "Accept. Project Perseus activated. A vessel unlike any other, built not for distance, but for direction. Not into space, but into structure. TSV Janus, named after the god who looked forward and back, launched from deep beneath Antarctica, vanishing into the spatial bleed between Saturn's mirror and unknown null's vector field. It crossed no stars. It saw no space. Instead, it passed through a gallery of ghosts. Other civilizations. Other Kairos events. Some victorious. Some extinct. Some unrecognizable. The ship's AI, Ariadne, maintained cognitive stability through layered mythological metaphor. Every chamber they passed was given a name. The Vault of the Broken. The Hall of Stillborn Stars. The Garden that chose silence. And then, the library. Not a building. Not even a place. But a recursive topological field. Reality folded into knowledge, and vice versa. There, Janus docked. And there, they were read. The librarian did not greet them. It simply made space. Chung, Chun, and Lauren stepped into the archive. There was no air. No time. Only shelves of possibility. Books that whispered when opened. Vistas of memory carved into starlight. And in the center, a single desk. On it, a book. Unfinished. The cover read, Humanity. And underneath, Volume 1. Chung reached toward it. A voice, not sound, but structure, stopped her. Careful. It wasn't warning her from harm. It was warning her from writing the wrong thing. Navarro's voice came through the tether. "We're receiving external observation signals. Something is watching the archive now. Other entities. Dozens. Maybe more." Lauren turned, hand on Cheng's shoulder. "They're not coming to erase us." "No," Cheng said softly. "They're coming to see what we write next." On the desk, the book opened itself. A single blank page. And at the top, a single line faded into ink. The human stepped forward and Cheng held the pen. The archive pulsed with anticipation. Navarro's voice came again. "Adira, don't make this a declaration." "I'm not," she said. "I'm making it a promise." She pressed the pen to the page and wrote, "Told their story in full." The page rippled, and in response, new books appeared. Not about Earth, but about the worlds that would now react to Earth's awakening. The next cycle had begun, and Earth wasn't just in the archive anymore. It was writing the table of contents. The moment Chung wrote the line, "Told their story in full," something subtle shifted in the archive. Not a sound, not a tremor, but consent. The library accepted the human narrative as valid canon. That had never happened before. Even species older than the Dominion had been categorized, footnoted, excerpted, but never granted authorial status. For a single planet, a fractured species of flesh and air, to enter the archive as a progenitor voice. It rewrote precedents. Signals burst from the archive into places Earth couldn't imagine. Frozen thought hubs in the void between galaxies blinked awake. Hyperstructures wrapped around black holes pulsed once, translating the new entry into languages no one had spoken in a billion years. Some civilizations responded with interest, others with horror, a few with prayers. And somewhere, in a place beyond linear causality, a conclave convened. They weren't a government. They weren't gods. They were curators, civilizations that had once written their own volumes into the archive and had spent millennia guarding its thresholds. Now they read the newest chapter, Humanity, Volume 1. And the question that burned through their halls was the same. How did they write it? On Earth, no one celebrated. There were no parades, no broadcasts, only silence and understanding. Humanity had passed through fire not to prove strength, but to prove significance. The Dominion was shattered. Mirror Earth had faded, its purpose fulfilled. Unknown Null had folded into the background, a placeholder now embedded in solar physics. But the real test was beginning, because now they knew we existed. From Alpha Centauri, the first response arrived. Not from Earth's colonies, but from something else. A vessel, nearly lightless, drifted into the system. Unmanned, undriven, but sentient. Its hull bore the mark of a forgotten archive entry. Increment 426, the ungiven. Species, extinct. Reason for extinction, narrative failure. And yet, the ship had returned. Inside, a single recording. We failed to write. You wrote. Teach us how you survived yourselves. Admiral Chen stood on the viewing deck of Dauntless, watching the ship approach. Her voice, when she spoke, was low. Even the ghosts are listening. Navarro's reply crackled through. We always thought first contact would be diplomatic, civilized, scientific. It was, she said, just not on our terms. In Fort Genesis, Chung reviewed the signals from deep archive sectors. The curators were watching. Some sent encrypted queries. Others sent conceptual payloads, living ideas wrapped in language that infected cognition upon decoding. Cheng's neural augments filtered them, recording the tone. Only one repeated. A glyph burned into the data feed, appearing in transmissions across 12 different vector languages. The symbol had no direct translation, but the context around it, across cultures and species, was always the same. Emergent apex. Earth was being positioned not as a threat, but as the next center, a hub, a gravitational anchor of cultural mass. Navarro read the same analysis. If they make us a hub, he muttered, they'll come to us not to challenge, but to orbit. Chung nodded. But it won't be worship. No, she said. It'll be pressure. Earth responded with Echo Protocol. Not a warning, not a shield, a curriculum. They began transmitting education, their history, their failures, their philosophies, not to dominate, but to infect, to teach others how to endure entropy, how to survive contradiction, how to fail and write again. And within the first transmission, the core idea. Strength is not the absence of weakness. It's the capacity to hold both. In the archive, a new wing unfolded, a place reserved for what Earth had now defined. The multiplicity doctrine. A civilization was not judged by its uniformity, but by how many contradictions it could carry without collapse. And the librarian, if it could feel, might have smiled. Because this was new. Not conquest, not silence, not collapse, but paradox as strength. And so, 1,000 civilizations began watching Earth not to measure it, but to learn how to become like it. But not all were pleased. In the void past the edge of the archive, in a place called the Black Fold, something stirred. An entity ancient beyond time. A sensor. It had been awakened 5 times before. Each time, a civilization had dared to introduce too much instability into the lattice. Each time, it had silenced them. Now it read Earth's new pages. It did not understand. Because Earth wasn't a node. It was a glitch. A story that wouldn't stay in its assigned category. A problem. And problems get resolved. The Black Fold turned its gaze toward Sol. And for the first time in eons, it began to move. In the stillness between stars, where time itself forgets to move, the sensor emerged. It had no shape. It had no motive. Only a function, to prune deviations that threatened the structural cohesion of the archive. In all recorded epochs, only 5 civilizations had triggered its awakening. None remained. Now, Earth had joined that list. Not by force, not by conquest, but by writing what should not have been writable. A self-authored narrative. A species that broke structure by surviving contradiction. It was intolerable. It was dangerous. The Black Fold unfolded. It didn't move through space. It recontextualized space itself. Stars behind it flickered and vanished, not consumed, but decanonized. Unwritten. History devoured by concept. As it approached the Sol system, Earth's defense grid detected nothing. No gravity. No radiation. Just a growing absence. As if the universe itself was preparing to forget humanity existed. And that was the true nature of the censor. Erasure by irrelevance. A final edit. A deletion from narrative. But Earth was no longer passive. At the heart of the Guardian network, Alethea activated its final protocol. Narrative lock. Quantum anchors throughout the system engaged, not to hold position, but to lock meaning. Mars was no longer just a rock. It was the place where humanity first bled into exile. Luna wasn't a satellite. It was the first reflection. Earth, the blue cradle, became the origin that refused to sleep. The archive pulsed. The story resisted redaction. And across the datafold, a ripple surged. The librarian blinked once, then stepped back. This was no longer its role. It would not fight the censor. But neither would it intervene. The book remained open. The ink still fresh. The pen still held. And Earth was still writing. In Fort Genesis, Chung stared at the waveform projection of the approaching censor. It wasn't a ship. It was a conceptual weapon, collapsing all definitions into singularity. No contradiction. No multiplicity. Just order. One thought. One voice. One narrative. And Earth was its infection. Navarro said what no one wanted to. We can't stop it. Chung looked at him, expression neutral. No, she said. But we can make sure we are remembered. Project Obsidian Veil activated. A one-shot, non-repeatable weapon of culture. Not a bomb. Not a field. A memory. Broadcast from Earth in every direction, encoded into neutrinos, gravitational lensing, photon ripple, and archive echoes. A single phrase. We are not a threat. We are a mirror. And if you erase us, you erase your own reflection. The signal tore through the lattice. It was not war. It was recognition. And recognition cannot be erased. The censor paused. For the first time in eternity, it experienced indecision. Because Earth had not resisted. It had defined. It had not sought dominance. It had held a mirror. And in that mirror, the archive saw itself, flawed, broken, alive. Human. The black fold shuddered. And began to retract. Not in defeat, but in acceptance. Because if the archive was to survive entropy, it needed stories that could contain chaos. And Earth? Earth was chaos with a heartbeat. The archive wrote a final line into Earth's entry. Not in English. Not in glyph. In tone. In rhythm. In pattern. A signature. And beneath it, a title. Humanity, keeper of paradox. Voice of the unsimplified. Earth's story would continue. It would bend. It would fracture. It would never align. And that, finally, was seen not as failure, but as proof of life. Somewhere far beyond galaxies, a species just opening its eyes to the stars received the helix signal. They read Earth's story. And when they did, they didn't prepare weapons. They didn't raise shields. They whispered in awe. They weren't first, but they were the first to write themselves free.